Alright, this video is to help you with laying out a two-point perspective sketch, a little bit of a tutorial going on with our activity 2.3 on perspective sketching. So the thing we're going to take a look at is going to be, well, how do we create our two-point perspective sketch? So a few little notes down here in the corner, bottom right-hand corner here. So I've got two-point perspective sketches. Width lines go back to vanishing point 1. Depth lines go back to vanishing point 2, and the height lines are going to stay vertical. So, as I take a look at my object in the isometric, we're going to stick with the same object as what we did for one-point perspective, and we're going to see a very similar kind of sketch get created, but a little bit different because now we have two vanishing points. So, when we look at this object, I'm going to imagine first, I'm going to go ahead and kind of enclose this into a glass box before I get too far, and that way I can kind of help with the proportion. Alright, now as far as those width, height, and depth lines, here's what I kind of want to show you on the isometric. Width lines, and I'm going to draw these arrows. So width lines are any lines that run in the same direction as the arrows. So like this would be a width line, this one would be, this would be, and this would be. On this side, I'm going to run depth. And depth runs from front to back. So, if you look at depth lines, it'd be like this line, and this line, and this line, and this line. So, and then the only one I got left is height. And height are ones that run up and down. So, any lines that follow that one, they're going to stay vertical. Depth lines, any ones running in that same direction as those arrows, are going to go back to vanishing point 2, and any lines running on the width are going to tie back to vanishing point 1. So let's go ahead and practice that a little bit. So by setting up our glass box. Vanishing point 1, now here's what I usually do, is I'll start with what point I want to start to draw. I'll put my pencil there. I go ahead and move my ruler up to that point, and then I go ahead and make sure I'm lined up with my vanishing point. So making sure you always stay lined up with your vanishing point. I'm going to go ahead and draw that back. There's a width line. Here's a width line. And here's a width line. Now, vanishing point 2, these are the depth lines, same kind of thing. I can slide my straight edge up there, line up with vanishing point 2, draw back to the depth, same thing here, and all the way back here. My next set of lines will be the height lines. So the height lines, as they go from top to bottom, they stay vertical, so notice they don't have a vanishing point they go to. They will eventually, so when we get to three-point perspective. But with two-point, that's the only thing we're working with. Same kind of procedure we're going to follow as to go through and complete the rest of this object. So I'm going to start looking for faces that touch the outside of the box. So like this face, and this face, and this one. But I'm going to start with some of the easier ones. And just like I did last time, I'm going to start with the front face. So here I'm going to kind of have to estimate is, well, how much does this front face take up on the width and on the height on that front of the box. So if I look from this bottom corner, if I go halfway, I'm put right there. So I know I'm not hitting the edge of my face yet. If I go about another half, which would end up being a quarter of the box, I'm going to start hitting that point. So I'm going to do the same thing here for my glass box. Go about halfway, about another half, mark me a dot. I know my lines for height are going to stay vertical. Then I can make sure I'm lined up with my vanishing point, and go ahead and outline this face nice and dark. I usually like to get these faces nice and dark so before they start getting too confusing in perspective sketches. I'm going to go ahead and move to the right side. So this one here takes up about half of the depth. So here, if I start looking, about half of the depth would be right there. And I can draw my height line in. Go ahead and darken the outside edges. And there is that particular face. So, now, in order to make that top face, because that's the last one that meets there, I got to start breaking this down line by line. So looking from this corner, and I got a line that comes back to meet here, and then this line from this corner comes up to meet it. So to make that top face. So I'm going to put my pencil on that corner, on the front face, go ahead and line up with vanishing point 2, go ahead and draw back, light line, so just to give me a little bit of a guideline. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. Line up, but now I'm running in the width dimension. So now I'm going to go back. I'm going to draw that line till I hit that guideline that I just drew last time. Then I can go ahead and darken this line. And when I do that, I can see that the rest of the box is really going to take care of that kind of L-shaped face that I see on the top of the box. So you can see that it's kind of looks a little bit more natural than what it did in the 1-point perspective, but you know, it's still there, and you can kind of see that a little bit better. I'm gonna follow the same process on the bottom. So starting down on this corner, because this does the same thing. Line comes back, there's a corner that gets formed when those two lines converge. So set this up, draw my line back here, start from this corner, line up with vanishing point 1, draw back till I hit that guideline, and then just kind of darken that out. Last thing to do is I need a vertical line to show the corners, so that way I can see these are two separate faces, kind of like it does here in the isometric. So I'm going to line up my straight edge on those points, draw a line between, and there ends up finishing out our object. The only thing we have left to do, add some tonal shading to make this kind of stand up off the page. The other thing it kind of does is when you're dealing with perspectives, you got, sometimes depending on how complicated your object is, you may have a lot of lines kind of passing through the sketch, and when you do, it tends to get a little confusing. So one of the things that we kind of try to do with shading as well is shading will kind of pull that object up off of the paper a little bit, and as I kind of crosshatch here as I finish out the object, you'll kind of see it kind of pulls it off away from some of those lines, some of those construction lines that we went ahead and we created to make this object. So again, same kind of shading convention as before. Darker on the fronts, a little bit lighter on the sides, and this finishes out our 2-point perspective sketch.